Hey everyone, this is Brian from ActiveMelody.com. In the last lesson that I posted, which was the overview of the major and minor pentatonic scale, I had several responses back from folks saying that they wanted to learn more. And all I did was give a very brief introduction. If you haven't watched it, make sure you do so. But it was just a brief introduction of the difference between the major and the minor pentatonic scale and how those are really the only two scales that I use. I use an occasional variation off those, but if you understand those two scales and how they work together, you can play along with just about anything. So, but what people wanted to know was, how do I take this to the next level? What do I do with this? Now that I know the boundaries, how do I start playing solos with that? And so that's kind of a tough question to answer in some ways, because a lot of it, just depends on your learning style. The way I learned was, as soon as I learned the boundaries and learned the scales, I started learning what other artists do with those. And I started with Albert King. He's a blues guy. If you're not familiar with his work, I highly recommend going to YouTube or wherever and doing some searches for his name and seeing what you come up with. But the reason I latched on to Albert King was because the licks that he played were kind of simple. There were ones that my ear could pick up on. You listen to some of these guys and they're too fast or it sounds too complicated. Albert King was very elegant, but something that I felt like I could do, or at least I could understand where he was coming from. So that's where I started. But anyway, the point of this lesson is I was going to take those two scales and show you just 3 notes in each, and how you can create almost entire solos out of 3 notes. So the purpose of this isn't to show, this isn't to try and be quick or flashy or see how many notes you can cram in or any of that. And the purpose of this lesson is to show that with 3 notes you can sound really good. You can create a good sounding solo. So it's not about the flash, it's not about the speed, it's not about any of those things. In fact, B.B. King is famous for making solos sound good with just 1 note. And a lot of it has to do with the vibrato and how hard you pick it and how long you let it ring out and all of those things. They're very important. And those are things that a lot of guitar players tend to overlook. And to me, that's the first thing that you should focus on, is trying to get the note to sound right, the vibrato, and how do you make it sound like a voice? How do you get your sound out of it? So I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to play along with the same jam track we used in the last one, which is just E, D, and A in the key of E. I'll include the jam track for this lesson too. If you want to download it, you can go to ActiveMelody.com. There's not going to be any tablature for this one because I'm just going to be kind of improvising using 3 notes. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've got the jam track going in the background, and real quick as a recap, in the last lesson, the previous lesson, I showed you, we're in the key of E, by the way, so I showed you the root position for the E minor pentatonic scale, which looked like this. Those notes. And then we shifted everything down 3 frets to play the major pentatonic scale. So it's the exact same notes, just shifted down 3 frets. So what I'm going to do is, in the major pentatonic scale position, I'm going to play 3 notes, and I'm going to show you how you can play solos with just 3 notes. So it really isn't about all the flash, it's about the feeling. So the 3 notes we're going to choose are the D string 11th fret, the G string 9th fret, and the G string 11th fret. Those 3 notes. Okay, so check this out. Now I did a little bend there, so I guess technically I'm cheating. That is actually another note, but I'm staying in those same 3 positions, so I'm not jumping to another fret. I am bending though. So there you go. That's major position, just using 3 notes. You can play around with that all day and come up with all kinds of different variations. Now we're going to take those same 3 notes, or same 3 fretted positions, and we're going to move them up 3 frets. So we're going to be in the minor pentatonic scale. Now, we're still in the key of E. This whole thing is in the key of E. But here, when we play it, you're going to notice a much bluesier tone. Again, all of that was just using those same 3 notes. Alright, so hopefully that made sense to everyone, and I hope I didn't rush through any of that. The point wasn't necessarily to show you how to play note for note any of these things, although you can learn that certainly by watching the video over and over again if you're interested in doing so. But the point was really to show you how that it really is about the technique and the nuances and the intonation and all that stuff that really give you that sound. It's not so much about the actual notes and trying to play as many as you can or as fast as you can. And there's time and a place for some of that, but to me it's really about getting it to sound right. And you can do that with just 3 notes. So that was kind of the point of this lesson. And so if you want to continue learning that stuff, you know, research who your guitar heroes are out there, whoever it is that you're inspired by or you want to sound like. Look at who they listened to when they were learning. That's what I did. I was a, you know, was and still am a huge Eric Clapton fan. Looked at a lot of the artists that influenced him. I was a big Jimi Hendrix fan. And you look and start digging, you know, peeling the layers back and looking at where this stuff came from. And with the electric blues, you know, it all kind of came out of the Mississippi Delta region, and it's very interesting to kind of trace it back. And you can start to hear a lot of the licks that like a Jimmy Page will use, for example. You'll start to hear where some of that stuff came from, and it's always kind of fascinating to trace the lineage. So so start researching who it is that you're into. If you're, like I said, I started with Albert King. It was the easiest for me to kind of get my head around and understand. His licks tended to be kind of easy to separate out. It wasn't very flashy, it wasn't very fancy, and it was something I felt I could do. I've always gravitated towards guitar players that I felt like I could kind of do what they're doing. You know, there's the Eddie Van Halens and, you know, some of those guys, and they're good, and I appreciate it, kind of like I appreciate someone that can juggle, you know, 20 balls at one time. But if I feel like I can't do it, it's in a different league. It's more of a novelty act for me, versus a real musician to me is someone that I can latch onto, my ear can latch onto, and I can sort of get what it is, where they're coming from. That's just me. I mean, we've all got our preferences, but all the lessons that I'll put out going forward will be, you know, obviously the type of music that influences me. Alright, so if you need the jam track for this lesson, go over to activemelody.com and click on the guitar lessons section at the top, and you'll be able to find this lesson, and the jam track will be attached to it. I'm not 100% sure what this lesson is going to be called, so I don't know what to tell you to look for, but because I usually name it after it goes up, so look around, you'll be able to find it. I'll call it something that makes sense. But we'll continue this kind of deep, you know, looking into how you play solos, how you approach solos, you know, how do you improvise, where does that stuff come from? It's half art and half science, it really is. So we'll just continue to explore that stuff together, and we'll see you in the next lesson.